Congressman Jim Himes, a Democrat who serves on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, Giuliani is completely denying he even got a briefing. But how concerning is it that, according to the Washington Post, Giuliani ignored the FBI warnings that he was the target of a Russian disinformation campaign?
Well, if the reporting is true, Wolf, that a number of people got defensive briefings, Senator Ron Johnson has acknowledged that he did. Giuliani apparently is denying that he did. That's, to me, that's not the critical thing in the story here. The critical thing in the story here is that Rudy Giuliani, for the last several years, whether he was witting or unwitting, has served the purpose of the Russians by out of thin air, making allegations, and you just ran some of them, Joe Biden took a bribe, he paid a bribe. There's not a shred of evidence for any of this. And actually, even that, and there's nothing there, pales in comparison, quite frankly, to the coup that Giuliani was instrumental in trying to lead against our democracy. Nobody other than President Trump himself was as aggressive in promoting the bald-faced lie that the election was stolen as Rudy Giuliani. Now, we're going far afield here, but for Giuliani to say, oh, well, this is unfair, guess what, buddy? You might be charged with a violation, I guess, of the Foreign Agents FARA. Maybe you'll be charged with that, but justice will never be delivered to you because you're not going to get charged for being one of the ringleaders of the most serious insurrection against our democracy since the Civil War.
The Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, as you point out. This follows the raid on Giuliani's home and office in a separate investigation, which the New York Times is reporting, is looking into the role that he played in ousting, allegedly, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Maria Ivanovich. If Giuliani was illegally doing the bidding of foreign agents in that regard, what national security questions, and you're a member of the Intelligence Committee, what national security questions does that raise?
Well, if he was doing the bidding of the Ukrainian oligarchs who he was all wrapped up with in trying to oust Yovanovitch because she was serious about addressing Ukrainian corruption, that is quite likely a violation of the law. So then you ask the next question, which is, what else did he do? What else did he promise? Remember, this is a guy who had, daily, minute-by-minute access to the President of the United States. We know that the President of the United States, because he was impeached for it, was perfectly willing to use a public resource, United States foreign aid, to try to extort the Ukrainians into providing fanciful dirt on the Biden family. The president was willing to do that, and he was impeached for it. So it does pose the question of what else were these guys willing to do? And I'll tell you what, I get it. Giuliani is running the Trump playbook here. When you get attacked, you deny everything. You say it's only because these people hate Donald Trump. Look, we know who Rudy Giuliani is. We know, look at Sidney Powell. Remember Sidney Powell, his partner, standing there at Four Seasons Total Landscaping, when she was sued in a civil court for propagating this lie that President Trump had the election stolen from him. What was her defense? Her defense was no reasonable person would believe that was true. Giuliani knew exactly what he was doing, and he was willing to put at risk American democracy for his own advancement, for his own relationship with Donald Trump, or whatever else he was getting out of it.
Speaking of the former president, how likely is it, Congressman, in your view, that this investigation into Giuliani eventually leads to legal ramifications for Trump?
Well, it's very, very hard to know, Wolf. It's an interesting question of whether Giuliani, if he's in real trouble, and he could be, we don't know. The FBI doesn't talk about the nature of investigations while they're underway. If he's in real trouble, I have to assume that one of his get out of jail free cards would be to say, well, let me tell you what I know about Donald Trump. So that's a possibility, but it's a pretty speculative possibility. But as you can sort of tell, as a guy who was in the chamber on January 6th, here's what's sad about that. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, any number of people, including some of my colleagues who perpetuated this lie that the election had been stolen, they're not going to face justice for what, maybe not legally speaking, but certainly by any definition is a treasonous act. They're not going to face justice for that. The several hundred people who've been charged for actually taking them up on their offer, for believing the lie that they knew was a lie, they're now all being indicted. Hundreds of indictments being issued against those folks who actually did breach the Capitol. And you know what? They're not going to be represented by Alan Dershowitz. They're not going to have high-priced white shoe law firms defending them. But people like Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump and the many, many people who aided and abetted that attack on our democracy, they'll lawyer up. And at the end of the day, they're not going to be the ones to suffer accountability.
Yeah, more than 400 people have already been charged in connection with the insurrection on January 6th. Congressman Jim Himes, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Let's get some more.